let's talk about Lionel Messi now. I put a little poll in the chat before we started. Is Messi the best player of all time? Question mark and then goat emoji. 91% of people said yes. So it seems that at least in the Tifo live chat, it's pretty clear that they think Messi is the best player of all time. Now, the reason I ask that question is not because it's interesting in and of itself, but because one of the big narratives around this World Cup, Seb, is that if Messi wins the World Cup and gets that medal and the trophy, then that will cement him as the all-time greatest, you know, in the minds of many. But it seems kind of arbitrary, given the number of other contributing factors to that happening. I'm not really sure. I mean, obviously, it's fantastic for a player to add a trophy to their repertoire, but at the same time, it's not really an indicator of that, even though it might appear that way to the people who are having the conversation.
Yeah, because it's really difficult to draw a straight line between, for instance, what Messi would achieve by winning a World Cup and what Diego Maradona did, because you could easily argue that 86 Argentina was a far inferior team to this one, and Maradona really did drag that side to the World Championship. Whereas if Messi does this, it's not the equal of that achievement, and yet it really has no effect on how Messi is viewed within his own era. And it's also, I think that the interesting way of looking at it is to invert it, to say, okay, so he doesn't say, I think we settled a few years ago on the fact that he probably wouldn't. We kind of assumed that his time was gone in 2018 when they were eliminated by France. And so does that change anything that he achieved at club level? Does that alter or dampen the entertainment that he's provided? Does it...
I mean, the big thing with Messi and to be fair, Ronaldo as well, was, as you've written before, was the excess goals, right? Like the number of goals is extraordinary, and that's really what makes them different from players that came before them. Whether they're better or not is a different question.
They've changed the expectation around dominance.
Yeah.
Like in the past, the idea of being the very best player in the world was kind of ethereal. It was a very short moment in time. You're thinking of players like Ronaldinho or Kaká, for instance, Andrei Shevchenko. Like you rise up, you reach the apex of your career, and then you fade away and give way to other players to kind of take your place. And what you would typically have is a few players sort of swapping positions at the top of the game. In this era, you've had two players who have dominated a space and arguably, well, not even arguably, they have made it entirely their own. And they've normalized a level of attacking production and quality and excellence, which was... in the televised era, can't speak for before that, it's very, very difficult to kind of to get a proper perspective on what kind of pre-modern era was like. But in this era, it's changed forever the way we'll look at the game, because we published a video on Illustrated about whether Mbappe and Haaland are the next Messi and Ronaldo. And the answer is kind of no, because even if they match what they've done in this era, which is almost impossible, we've seen it before. And that's kind of what provides this sort of special allure to kind of their duopoly, I guess.
It's pretty crazy, isn't it, when you think about it? You know, despite the fact, obviously, Ronaldo is not the player that he once was, whereas Messi still seems to be performing at his best. It's kind of crazy that both of them came along at the same time, that there was a good 10 years where there were two players who were doing things like pushing each other in a way that no one had ever done before.
But that's part of it, isn't it? That they probably both exist at that level because the other one was driving them on to be the very best. And maybe if Messi hadn't had that challenge, he wouldn't have had it. And Ronaldo had that incredible drive to get to be even better than he possibly could have been. The things they achieved, the amount of goals they scored is crazy. It looks like it's broken. If it was in a video game, I think it was unfair, unrealistic.
Would need to be nerfed.
Yeah.
You know what's kind of amazing about it is that the great fortune of this era is that you had these players, but you also placed them either side of probably the fiercest rivalry in the whole of club football. And so you had this kind of these two players who played their positions in different ways, dominated in slightly different ways, but also seemed to represent different things on either side of that divide. Ronaldo is kind of during that peak, during his kind of the imperial years of his career, he was typical of what you'd kind of associate with Real Madrid. The grandeur, the kind of the luster, all that stuff. Messi was in every way the La Masia ideal. He wasn't obviously born in Catalonia, but he came to represent exactly what you thought of whenever you imagined the teachings of Barcelona's academy. And so you had, it was like a kind of division of culture as well, and it enriched the rivalry, and it always will do. And so that's another factor in what comes next. You just can't place players in ideal situations like that. So it won't happen again, I think is what I'm saying.
It shouldn't do.
No.
I was thinking about like the Maradona bit with 86 and how people said to me in the past that Argentina team wasn't actually that bad, that he carried all the way to the final and then won it. And if you look at the Argentina team, like the actual team, it's a lot of high-end average. Like there's not really standout players apart from Messi. Messi is by far and away the best player in the tournament, I would say. If you look through the team, there's some solid players in there, but none who you would say, like none who you instantly remember as being like, oh wow, he was some player. Like we'll forget what's the guy at Man United, Martinez, Lisandro Martinez. We'll think of him in a few years and be like, oh yeah, he was that guy. I think, like, not to say he's not a good player, but there's certain players in there that you can easily just forget, and they'll come up in that game where you try and remember a player you can't really remember in a few years' time. Whereas, yeah, I mean,
these guys stay in your mind forever, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
You don't sort of, in 10 years' time, you won't suddenly come across a clip and be like, oh, I got to remember him. What a good player he was. Messi Ronaldo will never be in that territory.
Oh, yeah, but I was meaning more in terms of the Argentina team that he's.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Say, like, you can say Maradona carried them to the final. To an extent, you could argue that Messi sort of carried them. Like the goal that Alvarez scored, the tap-in, that Messi made out of nowhere by suddenly having enough pace to beat a guy who's 15 years younger than him. Down the line, and then like turn them inside out, then go to the box. It's all Messi, and without a player like that, that goal doesn't get scores. That's what happens. So
no, also a player who's willing to take the risk and who thinks he can do it, right, and then does it. I mean, it's like
he does it less and less now as well.
No, it's always audacious when it does happen, isn't it?
I wonder if he does it less because he's not quite got the same burst of speed that he once had. By today, I'm not sure that's true because he had it towards the end there. Maybe he needs to not do it so much in case his hamstrings go or something like that. Might also be that players he's playing up against are expecting it every single time. So the clever thing to do is not to do it. And that's why when he does do it, it's such it's
a surprise,
incredible weapon. Yeah, the art of surprising come out. It's.
I always I think about this thing. It was in one of James Montague's Tifo videos, but it's the story of in 2000 FIFA had this sort of awards ceremony for the century, and they had like a bunch of awards that were voted for by the public, and the big one was best player of the century, and it was obviously a competition between Maradona and Pele. And Maradona absolutely wiped the floor with Pele when it came to the public vote, but because Pele was kind of the vision of purity in football and didn't have the sort of the sketchy cultural history in the same way that as Maradona did, FIFA created like another award that they just gave to Pele to make it seem much more even than it was. But I always find that funny. I think about it now, we have this conversation because Maradona is so influential, not just because of what he did on the pitch, but because of who he was, what he did afterwards, which of course Messi and Ronaldo haven't had the opportunity to do yet. But Maradona was a cultural phenomenon in a way that I don't think either Messi or Ronaldo really are.
I think what's interesting about Maradona is he's always kind of, when he was alive, he was sort of surrounded by the idea of a fallen angel, like this incredibly gifted footballer who grew up and was kind of consumed by the game and celebrity and drugs, and became embroiled with figures in organised crime when he was when he was playing in Naples, and so you have this kind of this notion of tragedy juxtaposed with just ridiculous quality. The other thing there is, like, I feel a little bit sorry for Pele in that regard, because one of the major differences between the two is that Maradona played in a more heavily televised era, and so you are able, as a younger fan now, as someone not old enough to have seen Maradona play, to go on and to watch his goals, or you can just go and watch that video of him juggling the football while warming up to play for Napoli. Whereas Pele exists in sort of snippets, and you just see the goals, and it's very, very hard because of the era in which he played to feel, to have any sort of relatability to what he's doing. I was on Twitter a few days ago, Joe, when news of Pele's illness sort of broke and people were wishing him well. And there's a clip doing the rounds of him performing all the kind of tricks that are in regular rotation today, and Pele doing them first. So flick flack and kind of Rabonas, and I'm sure there's a Travella or two in there as well. And a lot of people were reacting with kind of astonishment, be like, oh my goodness, I didn't know it. And I think that kind of summarizes it, is that it really matters when you played, and and in the same way that it will do for Messi and Ronaldo too.
Yeah, I was just coming back to the Ronaldo Messi debates. I think that there's a sense in which they have acquired like an added, heightened like meaning as well, because those two guys, they both inhabit completely different ideological spaces as well, right? And that's a sort of dichotomy which exists all the way through football, right? This idea that you got Ronaldo on the one hand, who's like the Ubermensch, the guy who has achieved what he has achieved through sheer determination and insane athleticism, and then you've got Messi on the other hand, who's got that more sort of like street vibe to him, the sort of Pele like quality that you get obviously in Argentinian football. But I think that's partly why the debates about those two have gone on for so long, because it's not just a debate about who's better between these two. It's a debate about what football is supposed to be, right? Yeah. Is football supposed to be something that has this genius quality that no one can really get their hands on, which is what you see when you watch Messi? Or is football about working hard and getting to a level where people can't come close to you through sheer effort?
Well, if you think about like goals that they might be remembered for, I often think about for example, and there are many of them, but Messi's goal that kind of emulates the Maradona World Cup goal, where he dribbles all the way along the pitch and beats about 7 people and then just passes it past the goalkeeper. The one I think Ronaldo will be remembered for is the slow motion jump, where he's twice the height of anybody else in the box. The 1,000 frames per second one, where he reaches 15 foot or something.
And they put all the balls at events so you can try and reach the same height.
And does the incredible header, and I think they both kind of they both sort of emphasise what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
And then you got like Ronaldo doing the bicycle kick against Juventus, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like moments that are perfectly executed technically, which have obviously been rehearsed to the point that you know exactly how to do it. He was trying to score that goal about 10 weeks before he did it. He kept trying to do the overhead kick. You see him trying different games.
He's a muscle memory guy.
Yeah, whereas I think when I think of goals that Ronaldo scored, I try and think of what they are, and then I can suddenly remember individual bits like that one, maybe that one. Whereas Messi, I can think of all the ones where he's dribbled past people. And it's almost like a choice between goal moments and just moments in the middle of the pitch. Messi just things in the middle of the pitch that you get like, I don't know how he's done that.
It's a sort of choose your poison affair, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you liked today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you did like it, you might be interested in How to Watch Football, Tifo's illustrated book. It's 52 rules for understanding the beautiful game on and off the pitch, and it is the perfect holiday gift. How to Watch Football is out now in stores and online. See the link in the description to find out more, and thank you for watching today's video.